I we are, intern.
Okay, so that must be.
Yes.
Hi,
Yeah.
Hi, John, nice to meet you.
Oh.
I'd like to encourage anyone and everyone to move this direction because I can promise you, I'm not changing my voice. So if you can't hear me, go to move.
Mr. Wallace?
Well, we got that microphone over there.
Jay, you wanna sit right for the camera?
No, I'm only gonna be here for a couple minutes. I'm just killing.
Turn it on.
That's just for the board meeting, right?
No, I can turn it on, would you like me to turn it on?
Well, you know, my outfit, someone needs to hear that out, you know. I don't know if Dave's hearing it.
It looks like everyone who needs to be here, all the committee members are present, so I'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, item 2 is approval of minutes. I'd ask for a motion to approve minutes of both the March 15 and April 20 meetings, which you should have, received. Mr. Ravens moved approval, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Hauser is seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no. Motion carried. Moving to item 3, building maintenance issues. In the absence of any objection, Mr. Schultz needs to get on, with some other business and would like to, appear at the start here. Does anyone have an objection to that?
It's what?
Any objection to Gary giving, his input, first thing here on the agenda? Okay, it sounds like that's fine. I do have, I've got little notes to myself here that I have things to ask you on items 3A through E. But, so.
You wanna go through them right?
I will. The first one I wanted to ask was, did you happen to, have a chance yet to get a quote for paving, parking and access at the animal shelter?
I have not, I'm meeting with Scott Jones May 9th
Okay.
for the animal shelter and for the ADF.
Right. I think on the small maintenance items, the list, you gave us a pretty good list a week ago. I don't know that we need to revisit that today unless something is brought up. The next item I have, for you is also as to paving at the ADF plant, same thing.
May 9th, yep.
Need to get together with the commissioner. Okay. Then going down to the Doughty Road building, there was a question about lift availability. That was also with the highway department. Do you know that yet?
That is not gonna be available.
It's not going to be available? Okay. So,
I'm sorry, which was that on?
that was under Doughty Road building. And it was referring to a lift that would put workers up at the eve level.
Make a quick comment. Let me, if that's what we're gonna do, and if that seems to be the plan, let me measure and see how many reading handlers I've got in case we have to get some additional ones. And if you're gonna have a lift there for one day, then we wanna make sure we can get the whole thing done. So I'll count them up and see what I've got, and then I'll get them to Gary and whatever you guys figured in. If we have to order some more, then you'll know.
Do you have access to any private vendors where you can get a quote for one day use of a lift?
Yes.
And you can do that by the next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you. That being the case, does anyone have questions for or comments to make to Gary about other items on the agenda here before he leaves?
I have a question, I don't know, maybe more of a comment. Under the animal shelter, you've got paving, the access and the parking areas, and I'm thinking, is there a return on that investment to start with? In other words, it's gonna cost something. What is the return? The second one would be, if we're looking at paving the ADF, and we're looking at paving Fritz, and maybe, I don't know where else, maybe those those, at least you got a return on what we're gonna spend on that. I mean, if there's somebody out there that wants to pave it, that's fine, but I just think that we've got customers for the other properties, that maybe we should look at that first before we commit to paving the animal shelter. And I guess I would throw that up for the monkey house too, or whatever they're calling it, till such time as we find out what all we've gotta spend money on. I think that, maybe we need to tuck in just a little bit on some of this stuff.
I did bring it up in property too, and I think they told me to hold off on it,
Okay, so,
that paving. And that, so,
yeah,
I just threw it
wasn't
out there,
there,
I just threw it out there, just,
I just think that we've got other areas that we have actually employees, people that actually have jobs, that, probably should be looking at paving their facilities first, and people that are paying some pretty decent rent. I've been to a lot of animal shelters, and some of them are paved, and some of them aren't, and some of them, the animals just look happy to see people. So, just a comment. Other than that, is Scott gonna look at over at Fritz Avenue? That's getting really rough, as you know.
I was planning on taking them to multiple buildings.
Appreciate that, thank you. I'm probably more concerned with Alan Bradley than I'm anything else right now.
Mike?
Yeah, Gary, I witnessed the folks working behind the Enterprise Center today.
Yep.
On the roof.
Yep.
What was that all about, the drain
They're
there?
fixing the downspout, or the gutters there, and then, the whole roof is basically is kinda, I don't know if it's from the wind or what it's from the ice and all that, but all the fasteners are coming loose. So for the last couple days, they've been out there, fastening the ridge cap down and everything, cause it was like a water faucet leaking down into the barefoot painters, area there.
Looked like they were going all the way along that ridge there.
Yep.
That huge lift. Okay.
Yeah, they did, today they did the gutter and the bottom side of it where they could reach with the lift, but the last couple days they were up on the roof and they were tied off and they were fastening all the fasteners down, cause they pulled themselves out about a quarter inch. So on the ridge cap, it was actually leaking into the barefoot painters, like,
Right.
what's her name, the lady called and said it's like a water hose coming through.
Yeah, this is Rocco.
Yeah.
Are there putting
Okay, thank you.
new rubber gaskets under or anything?
We put all new ones in, pretty much, yeah. We actually bought some oversized ones and put them in.
Thank you.
You got something going on the gates roof too? Saw a ladder.
They are attempting to fix some gutters and downspouts that were there, but, we're gonna have to make a Menards run to get the same gutters.
Other questions for the maintenance department? Any? Thank you, sir.
One thing I do have is not the asbestos, the mold at the library and the Fritz. I get approval to get that, remediated for the dollar amounts that I said the last time, in our last meeting.
I couldn't see it on the agenda, maybe that's my fault. Try to get that on.
What was that dollar amount?
I think, the library was $3,928.67. The Fritz, the trucking, or the Dull trucking area, and the Liberty roofing area there, was a total of $8,030.06. I already got the samples and everything, and that was I wrote it down, $1,740.75. So we already did the samples and it come back positive. And I just, once you know about it, you can't just not do nothing about it,
Thank you.
Why were we waiting anyway with that? Why did we not approve it at the last meeting?
I don't think it's been on the agenda.
It wasn't on the agenda, and I just actually got
Oh, okay.
If you have the ability, here to do things by emergency and override an agenda, that's fine with me, but I'm not sure, what your operating rules are.
Yeah, well, it's not something, it's been there for years.
I don't think we can with joint management. I don't think we can with this committee.
yeah, since this has been kinda ongoing, it's not like a water main broke or something, or the sprinklers broke, what we just need to.
So you could theoretically approve the library then.
Theoretically, I guess I wanna double check the minutes and see what we have.
Are they, okay, I'm assuming the remediation means they're gonna eliminate the mold that's there. Are they gonna put sheetrock back on, patch the walls, and everything else?
They're just,
gonna-
they're cleaning everything, you know, with, they're gonna come in, the Fritz people are gonna have to leave for 2 to 3 days, they said.
Is this
I already,
fogger or something? Maybe like a fogger or something?
I guess I don't know what it all entails, it's, they're HEPA filtering the whole inside, they're gonna clean it all, they got, all their desk stuff, they gotta move all their desk stuff, because I don't know what it all entails, but,
Okay, in the library, you don't know what that entails either.
well, the library, there's, where was it, kind of by the first floor there, by the big window there?
The 2 windows that lead,
Right.
I believe that's where,
And then downstairs by the sink area.
yeah.
I assume it's, if it's on the surface, it's gonna be back inside the wall. That's my question. You're gonna sheetrock, are you gonna guarantee that they're gonna get rid of it? mean,
I guess I don't know.
$10,000, $12,000, $10,000, whatever it is, I think if you come on here, please. And it makes sense to do it before.
The one at Fritz, it seems like it was caused from a furnace, that's upstairs there. I think that condensate pump, quit working. But that was probably from years ago, and then it just built up over time. And if you go down there and you look at all the vents, it's black around all the vents.
Well, that could be from 5R.
Yeah, well, that's what, I was having them clean up the top side of it too, because all that 5R stuff is up on the top side also.
Other questions for maintenance? If not, I'd like to go back to the top of the agenda to 3A, animal shelter. I don't see anyone here from that facility. Does anyone have anything to bring up there?
Where's the preliminary plan, wasn't there a drawing, expand the size of it?
The animal shelter?
Yeah.
I know there's an ongoing discussion about adding what I guess I'll call a cat room.
Yeah, of course.
And we saw a single line drawing here, I probably have it in this pile, and I think at the last meeting there was discussion that somebody needed to take that to an actual construction design phase so that an accurate cost estimate can be prepared.
Where's the money supposed to be coming from?
But I don't know a thing about it.
Not much, or
I don't know a thing about it. Does anybody in the room know about the,
It's donations, Tony.
what?
Donations from a citizen.
Complete, the whole works is gonna be donated?
Well, they're debating that in the animal control board right now.
Well, the reason I asked, because you don't even have a close idea what it might cost. And then we don't know if there's enough money, or there wouldn't be enough money to pay for it all.
Is it the animal shelter involved in it?
We need to get a little bit more firm ground, if you wanna call it that, for a decision to be made.
Well, even if it's a addition to a public building, it has to be a kind of an engineered addition. You know what I mean? You just can't, put up a kind of a lean-to. It's a pretty good size.
I think you'd have to have state approved drawings and all, yeah.
Right, you have to have always, I mean, I understand that, but beyond that,
Right.
there's gonna be a significant amount of money involved. And the whole building, to start with, was 400,000. I'm gonna make a significant addition, you know, it's not a stretch to say that it's gonna cost another 100,000 to add
The building
expansion.
itself, I thought ran about 6.
What's that?
I thought the building itself, the one that's out there now, was like 6.
I thought it was 400.
I'm looking up right
Oh,
now.
well, that's even worse.
It's getting looked for.
Yeah, it's 604,000.
Right, it was 600,000, and I know because I argued and got the snot kicked out of me, because I figured that it needed to split a little bit better than what it was. But if you're gonna spend $600,000, on the building, and then the other thing was, we were supposed to get, we had talked with, Tony Lumber, and, Larry was going to draw the plans up for free, and then we had somebody came and said, oh no, you have to have state engineer plans, you have to be drawn up by an engineer and whatever, and that added a whole bunch of cost to the thing. Now, if you're gonna put an addition on, like Mike says, you're gonna have to have state engineered, state approved plans for it, plus whatever it's gonna cost. I'm gonna go back and say what I said at the beginning of the meeting. I've been in a lot of the animal shelters over the last few years, and I can tell you, the animals are just happy to be there as opposed to out running around or getting shot at or whatever. So, I think we need to look real close at what we're gonna spend on this thing.
Other thoughts or comments on the animal shelter?
Would you take a comment from the public, Chair?
Absolutely.
As a person that is directly involved but wants to stay not involved in this issue, I would appreciate very much that the animal shelters actually talked to and maybe talk with the person who's talking about donating the money. Because at this point, nobody's asking the county to spend any of their money or the city to spend their money. And to go round and round and to make it sound like you won't move forward with something, and I know nobody's here to ask you to move forward in the proper way, and that's really unfortunate. But nobody knows how much it's going to cost. And for the citizen who's willing to donate their money to do the project, they must know how much it costs in order to know that they can donate the money. And it was said 2 meetings ago, so last month's meeting, that that citizen was willing to donate probably 80%, if not more, and the Friends of the Rusk County Animal Shelter have money. So at some point, somebody's got to get off the pot and talk to the right people, because if there's a citizen in this community that's willing to donate their own money to put that addition on, and we're sitting here talking about whether the county or the city wants to spend the money and no one's asking you to spend the money, that annoys me when I sit here. It terribly offends me that we can't actually find out what's going on with that building. There is a good drawing from someone, from Gary, that needs to go to the right people, and nobody's asking you to spend any money at this point.
Does anyone know why Dawn hasn't been appearing at these meetings? She's been consistently invited. That would seem to be maybe where the communication's dropping off. I think that Terry Woodwick had appeared here a couple of times and probably filled us in, but this is the second meeting in a row that he hasn't been here. Would be good if somebody from that entity would show up, and so that we get correct information moving both directions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
could I propose maybe the next meeting agenda having something on there and inviting, someone from the Friends, the, private individual, and, yeah, maybe Mr. Wedwick, if he's the animal control chair, and, the animal control employee, and have them all be here either at the next meeting, or if the next already has a full slate, schedule another one.
I wouldn't think anybody would have objection to that. Any issues? We'll plan it that way. Thank you. Moving on to the library then, note B1 is just informational. Proposals for the HVAC work at that facility are due May 17th. There will be a walkthrough with any interested contractors on May 2nd. I believe the Rusk County Maintenance will be taking part in that. If there's no further comment on that.
Let's talk about that a little bit,
Okay.
just what's gonna be done. I mean, we had some work done there.
Mhm.
I think the work that you had,
Library?
the vent in the basement that went across, what's.
That's all done.
Yeah, it is.
That part of it's all done.
So what's going on now? What are we doing now?
I guess Gary got away from it.
Or is that the boilers?
Well, the boilers are part of the discussion. They're saying they need new boilers. One of the boilers is shot. The other one's still functioning and working or whatever.
Okay, so it's probably.
There's some of the controls, there's some controls that need to be replaced that have been basically either cut loose or abandoned or whatever. Nobody seems to know why. But as far as the ductwork and everything else goes, to pull the air back from the other end, that's all in place, it's all been done. So, I assume it's gotta be more a matter of boilers. The air handler's even good. There's, somebody talked about you have to replace the air handler. No, the air handler's a big metal box with a blower in it. And so the worst you can have is a motor, possibly some bearings or something like that, but that's not the case now. So, I don't know how far along anybody's gonna take this.
Do you know what time that walkthrough is? Or, oh,
I don't have the times, but I can certainly get them to you, Randy. And that was information I got from Gary's. The other item I had on the library is as to the two round windows on the south side, which we've heard repeatedly over the years are the primary source of leakage into the building. We've had contractors tell us that it just becomes hard to seal a round window in a sidewall that's typically made up of square or rectangular type of components. So at the last meeting, we reviewed a change order proposal provided by Leckleitner Builders in the amount of $10,770 to pull those two round windows and replace them with square windows of comparable size. And I think there was a little bit of concern about that being quite a high amount of money. So when I walked around and passed out papers here a moment ago, that's an alternate proposal from the same contractor to simply remove the round windows and infill the wall. So the wall would match both inside and out. The windows would essentially be removed and not replaced. But that would need to occur before the stucco on the south wall is done. So it's something we should make a decision on relatively soon. You see the proposal for the wall infill and removal of those two windows is somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000 less. It's $2,990, I believe, again versus $10,770. Anybody have any thoughts on that or want to express any reasons for going either direction?
Is there going to be a plan to, paint that first floor, because that hasn't been painted since 1997, so new paint in that area is going to stick out like a sore thumb. Is there going to be a plan to, at least that one wall, from corner to corner, to paint it?
I'm not aware, was it on your list of things that needed to be done otherwise?
Most likely paint was on there.
I
But
know what you're
this,
saying.
yeah, what I'm saying is like this, taking that, or replacing the windows and just putting wall there is fine, but then you're going to have a patch of paint, which is not something we've considered until there, since last meeting, I guess.
I'll say only half in jest that I've probably got a couple of prints at home that you can hang over the discolored area artwork.
How beautiful are they?
I like them, they're wildlife prints. I'm actually halfway serious.
Just a quick comment on that, you can take a patch of paint or a swab or whatever off of what's there, and you can get it matched up just about anywhere to an exact match. I mean, I've been doing that in almost all of my projects. And they'll match it right down to the whatever, you're not gonna notice it. And I guess maybe if you do notice it, then they just go ahead and paint the rest of the wall. But they can hit colors right dead on, so.
Yeah, actually just, Randy and I had spoken about what that project would entail, and that was kind of one question we had was, what would occur with the paint?
Well, it would have to be painted, but I'm just saying, once you put a base down or primer, you can match that paint exact.
there are some breaks, you know, that, like the corner where the side window starts, so there's probably some breaks that, you know, it would be probably fairly easy to match, I would think, so. And I see that they are replacing that oak trim on top, so.
Does anyone feel prepared to make a motion to accept either of these change order proposals?
I'll make a motion to close these windows off, whatever
So Tony's made a motion, does everybody understand his motion?
Seal the windows,
Seal them off, just
I'll second.
seal wall.
Okay, we have a motion by Tony, a second by Randy, to accept the change order proposal to remove the round windows and then fill that section of wall. Are those windows in the flat area or are they on the bowl?
The area that they're on is flat.
Flat, okay. That probably makes it at least a little simpler. If it was in the bowl, it would be a little bit tougher. We'd have to get somebody like John that could do that. You've heard the motion and the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no? Motion carried.
Question,
Yes, sir.
the question would be, are you gonna coordinate the mold issue with the removal of the windows and so on and so forth? It's not gonna make a lot of sense to go in there, get rid of the mold issue, and then open up the windows and find out there's still some stuff in there. I guess I'm just thinking, not the same people, at least coordinate it so you can get kind of everything done at roughly the same time. So you make sure you're not missing any mold that's in there.
Can you
Well, I think when they open that up, they're
make sure
gonna,
that's in the minutes?
I think they'll find it.
I mean, this.
like hay or anything, they'll have to remove.
So he wants the mold removed with.
Yeah.
At least
After that
coordinate
window.
it so that they can,
Coordinated.
cause like Randy says, they're gonna take the wood out that's bad if there's something rotted, whatever, which is bound to be. But then make sure that the mold's not in the insulation and not in the wood that's left in there or whatever.
So it's probably really something that Gary needs to be aware of.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So, when looking back, there was, action to authorize county administrative coordinator and city administrator to, approve emergency repairs to jointly owned properties. The original motion had been 5,000, but then it got discussed further and reduced to 2,500, so if there was anything that was anticipated to be 2,500 or less, either Chief or myself could authorize that, at least by what previous minutes indicated.
Thank you for the update.
And then, I believe Mr. Tater had a question on the walkthrough for the library, which according to the RFP on the county's website is May 2nd at 10:30 a.m. at the library.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any other questions, comments, concerns relative to the library? Christina, anything from you?
So is any start date on some of this, or any ideas?
No, I would expect it would start relatively soon. I think I asked that today in an email, but didn't get a reply on it. It's probably they want to
They're
go
getting
back.
into the busy season now
Yeah,
too, so.
they are. Absolutely right. Okay, then, we'll move down to item D, the ADF plant. Does anyone have anything there? We already discussed the need for paving access to the loading dock area. Does anyone have anything else relative to that facility? If not, item 3E, Dowdy Road building. Anything there?
I can add that I did respond to that WEDC request for proposals and submitted, the 501 Dowdy building as well as the north part of Gates Avenue, because those were coming due, so if anyone wants to wrap my knuckles for that, feel free.
Anybody got a ruler?
That, I think maybe Ashley was gonna call with kind of a rejection on that, proposal or that offer.
Yeah, that's been sent.
Get any response or any alternatives or?
The person had me on the phone for like half an hour going through GIS listings, looking for another property.
Mike?
Mr. Chairman, that's the same building we talked about taking that blower out, that one company was gonna take the blower out, cut
Yes.
the wall,
Yes, it is.
did everything.
They've been contacted and they're gonna start by taking a closer look at them next Monday when the gentleman gets back into Wisconsin. He's down in Texas right now.
Okay.
But yeah, they plan still to take those both down and make an effort to patch.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as item E2 goes, I have advocated in the past that we look ahead relative to this building and the building north of it at 1402 Jez Road with consideration of ultimately linking the two together. I think anybody that's been involved in economic development for any length of time realizes that the larger property you can make available, the more interest it tends to attract. And we've had recent evidence of that with the county selling the former Conwood plant to Henry Repeating Arms, and the city and county and other partners were in on a project that involved the construction of Norse Building Systems several years back. That's ultimately been sold 2 or 3 times, most recently to Centerline, which is operated by Kyle Chakowski from Weyerhaeuser. But again, those very large buildings do attract, I'd like to say, some fairly good users. And I think I told you at the previous meeting that we were quoted a rough cost estimate of $250,000 just to design a connecting building. Well, I don't think we need to necessarily go that far at this point in time. I was really hoping for a much, much lower cost, and know that some people are pretty.
You have one request or one offer for engineering?
Yeah, just one so far. I have actually.
Look at another offer or try to get another.
I've requested, another one.
That sounds unreasonable.
Yeah. What I was hoping that we could do would be somebody, find somebody that's handy with Photoshop, and maybe take a photo of, the 2 buildings that are there now and do an infill. And I don't know how much talent one has to, have to do that. I know it's nothing I've ever done before, but I've seen a lot of things that other people do. Including putting my face on an NBA player.
Rosemary Schmidt was good at that.
Rosemary?
Rosemary Schmidt, our former,
So,
finance
and the reason I was suggesting something like that is, so that, just for purposes of considering the idea and selling, maybe doing it someday when it may seem to make more sense, that we could have that kind of a view and a very simple line drawing to show people who might be interested in a property that size what could be done, but without investing a whole lot of money. So if anybody can point us in the direction of somebody that can do that, that would be useful.
I'm not pointing you, but when they did the second building, put the second building in to line up with the first building, was there any plans that might have shown the potential for another building?
Not at that time it was discussed, and they were presumably built exactly 200 feet
Right.
apart, same floor elevation, in line with each other, with that in mind, but I don't recall there being any.
We sketched something in, okay. Maybe we
Any other questions about the Doughty Road building or comments? If not, move down to the Enterprise Center, item 3F. I'd like to, I might have mentioned this at the last meeting, but it's something that I'd like to actually repeat. If I did and or whether I didn't, but Gary was asked a couple of months ago to try to put some kick plates over the tops of a few exterior doors that were rotted out on that building, and it looked terrible. and, he bought, I believe, five kick plates at about $30 a piece. And with crew time that was expended installing those, I think we came up with a cost of probably $3,000 was invested, and the building looks pretty decent right now as a result. Prior to that, we had been considering a complete replacement of those doors, 5 at $6,000 a piece, total of $30,000, exactly 10 times as much. And my point there would be, and I'm legendary at City Hall for being a cheapskate, is that sometimes it doesn't take the high cost solution to do what you need to do. Now maybe these kick plates will only work 5 years, but they take us somewhere down the road maybe, where we've upped the income from the facility and maybe can afford new doors. But sometimes it doesn't hurt, and Mr. Reynolds is pretty good at this too, at looking at alternate methods other than necessarily the high cost one. So I'm glad Gary did that. They look good. I think that the city administrator may have an update on leasing of space at the Enterprise Center, so we probably need to consider where we're at with our lease rates. At the last meeting, we bumped a couple up to $3 a year, and I think you all saw a handout where we were trying to get $3 a square foot per year in 1997. Hadn't upped anything since then. We're way behind the times. We need to probably get into kind of a stair-step approach where every year or every 6 months or something that we raise our rates, at least for new people coming in or anytime a renewal comes up. But go ahead.
Well, I guess first I'd ask Ms. Heath if you have any updates on Allied Cabinet. I was out there a couple days ago, and it looks like the inside of where they were is pretty well cleared out now. Those machines are out. I think they've still got a gas grill out front, but has he turned in any keys there? Or?
I believe I have until the end of this month.
Okay, so, but with that, I know I've been fielding calls looking for space and references to that space going back at least 8 months. I think Mr. Schultz mentioned that he had an inquiry on that specific space too. I don't know, Ashley, if you've gotten anything on your end, but there's plenty of people looking for space. I think Mr. Reynolds, you're aware of someone, so I was kind of looking for guidance on that space. Do you go to the person that called 8 months ago first and see if they're still interested? Do you open it up for proposals and let everybody that wants it tell you what they're gonna use it for and how much they're willing to pay to way through those, or how do you wanna do that? I don't wanna get accused of, giving it to somebody who's a buddy of mine at a deal or something like that. I mean, obviously that power rests here with the board, but, I think the board should just decide how we go about finding someone to occupy that space, because I think you'll find there's quite a few suitors for it.
Mr. Reynolds?
Does anyone have an idea what that space should rent for? I mean, assume it comes with electric and heat, because it's an interior building. So we're looking at 2,200 square feet roughly on that building, or on that portion of the building. What have we been getting for it to start with? What was that one renting for?
I don't know that you ever tracked down a lease for that one, but previous, or neighboring tenants were anywhere from, I think, $220 a square foot up to $250 a square foot, and recently all got up to $3 a square foot. I did reach out to Jake Feather, who I'm sure some of you know is a realtor in the area, and got his input or what he's seen kind of in the region, and he said anywhere from $3 to $6 a square foot for manufacturing and warehousing space is kind of what he sees. Usually if it's a lower square footage, it's a higher rate, and the bigger you get, the lower the rate goes, kind of like a bulk deal sort of thing. But so I think that would kind of be your target range is 3 to 6.
I would tell you again that, back when a lot of these buildings started, I was quite heavily involved with that, and at one point in time, we had a plan, essentially a formula that you could plug in, and it started out with square footage, you know, this many square feet at this rate, but then I was telling Alan prior to this meeting that we had modifiers that we attached to that, and it's probably true that as you get into a larger space, you'll find that people usually pay a little bit less for larger space than smaller ones, just because it's just as hard to manage a small one as a big one usually. So there is some economy of scale in allowing a little bit lower price as the size goes up. But we can put that down on paper the way it used to be. And the kind of things I used to have down as modifiers, and this was a formula that anybody could take and just work down the list and you come out with your number. The other things were condition of the property and age. Those are very important. Usually indicates, you know, an older building is gonna typically have higher maintenance, so you may need to account for that. And then I used to also do modifiers for loading facilities. How many docks are there? How many restrooms? What condition are those in? And is there a finished office space? And you can tweak the pricing a little bit, you know, for those things as well. And I really think we should probably have the people that are gonna be getting these calls, like Alan, come up with a proposed new formula that has increases over time to take us upward from that $3 a square foot, and also to allow modifications that are known in advance. So anybody that cares to have that list, if they get a call, say, here's our rates, here's what they are. And as we get down on the agenda here, there's gonna be a little bit more discussion about appraisals and how those may impact this as well.
Mr. Chair, so I did find a lease. The last signed lease we have is from 2017, and they were supposed to pay $350 a square foot.
That was right about where I was gonna suggest we ought to be looking right now.
Okay, so, as Mr. Christensen said, that I had someone that was looking at, it's not me, no relation, no friends, I don't think I've seen the guy. But if we're looking at $350, so if they're willing to go for something above that, what do I tell them? We've got 22,000 square feet that they can rent? Or do you wanna make the phone calls back to the people who were here 8 months ago and say, well, we'll give you first shot at it? Or do you wanna sit down and figure out a formula, whatever that may be? And if it takes us to $4, then we eventually give it around and they say, well, you know, we found something else. Do you have something in mind, or do you wanna work on that for a while? I agree, for what it's worth, that there probably isn't anything, especially if we're providing heat and electric, that should go for less than $3.50 to $4 a foot.
If there's a need for it at $4 an acre, or an acre, $4 a square foot, I would take it and push that.
Okay, but you and I aren't on this committee, so we can make the
I know.
recommendations, which is what I think we're doing, but it's up, the committee's gotta make the decision primarily before I can go talk to these people and say, here, I got something, I'll show you.
Last meeting or meeting before, not this last, but the one before, we raised everybody's,
The $3, right,
because they were too low. And
but $3 is still too low.
well, I won't argue that, I'm just saying, but I also think there's a need for some of these, lease agreements to have utility, what do we call it, escalators or whatever in them, because of the cost of heating and so forth anymore.
I agree.
You know, I mean, cost of heating and fuels have gone up, and you know, if you're providing it, yeah, it takes a big chunk of your rent.
Actually, that lease, and for that particular unit, the utilities were not included in the rent.
We're not included.
Correct. What if we accepted applications for anyone interested in that space and put in the application, hey, how much are you willing to pay per square foot and review those applications at the next meeting.
Well, that's certainly an option we could try.
And then you'd know the intent of what they plan to do with the space.
John?
I was gonna say we do like a request for proposals with it and see what, if there's all this interest in it, why don't we see what people are actually willing to pay and whether or not they want utilities included or whatever, then we know what
Do you wanna make a motion to that effect?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
You've heard John's motion, pretty much the same thing that Jamie said. Does anyone care to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Mike seconded. You've all heard the motion in the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no. Motion carried.
Question then, so they had to pay utilities separate?
Yes, I can try to pull up the exact wording.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know that every unit in there was individually metered, so.
I know that like some of those other smaller ones are not, because I was looking at one of the pieces for.
But if it was like prorated based on square footage, kinda like we do all the gates, that would make some sense.
So it says tenant shall fully and promptly pay for all water, gas, heat, light, power, telephone service, or other public utilities of every kind furnished to the premises throughout the term hereof that are separately metered.
Okay, so it's if they're separately metered.
Well, it says that are separately metered.
Maybe
I'm not
we're,
sure which ones are.
yeah, I would venture to guess without, being out there to look, that you probably have one, maybe two gas lines coming in and maybe maybe like the offices are separate from all the manufacturing space, but.
Yeah, I don't think they're separated.
Yeah, I guess I'm interpreting it a little different than you might be. Instead of it being a statement that all those utilities are separately metered, I think it means you pay for the ones that are separately metered, if any, but. Again, I'm no attorney, so. Either way too, without them paying, I guess the lights and the heat and stuff have been on in that one, so.
Mike?
Now, are you talking about that one specific space that originally he had rented at the Enterprise Center? The present person in there?
Yep.
Because sometimes he spilled over other sections of the building. I was just wondering, you're talking about that one big room where he was actually manufacturing, because then he was out in the hallways and all kinds of stuff. But anyhow, you're talking about the one big room, because he had a dryer, he had a spray, he was spraying the.
Well, there's a built-in spray booth further down there that is a shared spray booth. I don't think it's been used for quite a while until Barefoot Painter moved in, but I'm just referencing the 200 or so square foot space that he was renting.
Sure.
Anything further on that location? If not, moving to the Fritz Avenue property. At the last meeting, everybody saw an appraisal of that building's value. Anybody have any comments on that? Thought it was too high, too low? Ashley has, I think, the entire electronic file on that appraisal, which is probably a 100-page document. If you wanted any further detailed information. The next question relative to that would be whether or not anyone has an interest in putting that actually up for sale and setting a sale price. Personally, I think we're making good progress on that building. I'd like to see us retain it for a time. We have very good tenants at this time that are paying. The Marshfield Clinic is subleasing a portion of it through Mr. Reynolds. The Rockwell Automation has most of the space in the building now, and I can tell you that the city of Ladysmith has had Rockwell as a tenant in the former Mastercraft Casket Company for over 30 years. They're a very good tenant. They need that that space here. I'd like to keep them there and keep them happy in that location. Hope they're here 10 years from now. So, anybody's got any reaction to that? Tony?
Well, I got some questions as far as, you know, like the Fritz Avenue and Gates Avenue both. Well, not just those, but you have, Alley Road and some other buildings, Enterprise Center, all for rent. You know, is it ever gonna be our intention to sell these buildings? So, I mean, wouldn't it be better if we had a permanent tenant in there rather than just renting it out? I mean, what's the purpose of building these buildings? So that we can be a landlord?
No, you're right. I think originally when most of these were acquired, a couple of the ones you just mentioned were acquired by Rusk County by tax title. They were environmentally contaminated. We incurred some fairly high costs getting them cleaned up and renovated. In doing that, we accepted financial assistance, some fairly significant assistance, several $100,000, in one case over $1 million, in the other from the federal government to do that. And the federal government took 15 to 20-year mortgages on the property. It essentially required us to do what we said we would do in the application that we made to them. Now, some of those mortgages have actually expired, others have not. I believe that there's a formal process for getting those mortgages released. That needs to happen. The city has done that before on some properties. Like I just mentioned, the Mastercraft Casket Company got releases on them. We could theoretically sell them now. In some cases, however, the tenants are not interested. Others they are. ADF has been in the building that they're in since it was new, and they've always had the ability within their lease. Their lease provides that they could convert their lease payments to purchase payments and essentially acquire ownership, but in some cases they prefer not to. Rockwell has never indicated any interest to Ladysmith purchase that building, even though they've been a good tenant, as I say, for over 30 years, don't wanna own it. So, in some cases it can work, and others it may not be the best outcome. But I think always it's been the intention, and I have a list that I'll give you at the next meeting of, I think it's 7 projects that Ladysmith had been alone before we started doing these joint projects, and I believe that we sold 5 of the 7. And I just mentioned that Rockwell continues to lease, and I think we have one other tenant that's prefers just to be a renter. But otherwise, most of them have been sold over time. And you'll recall that this group got into a couple of significant joint projects, being the Norse building that's now occupied by Centerline, and the Conway building that's now occupied by Henry Repeating Arms. Those are both been sold. The Florence Flora and Weyerhaeuser buildings, which this committee did early on, have both been sold. So I think that is a good long-term goal when there's interest in going that route.
Well, I mean, we haven't attempted to list like the Gates or the Fritz, or whatever. I guess the Enterprise Center would be hard to list, you know, because it's a multi-purpose.
But the reason's been because those mortgages were in place. Now that they're expiring, it's time to think about whether or not we want to sell.
That's what I was getting at, is I mean, I think, you know, I'd like to see this put on the agenda for the next meeting.
Sure.
To cover Gates and Fritz and whatever else, you know, that we can take this up.
And one other item that I'd add is we have to also reflect back on what our intentions were when we acquired the property. You know, and if you think back some of these buildings were in terrible condition. You know, there were arguments at the time that they should just be torn down, but they were retained. We rehabilitated them, and at that point in time, when that probably started, Rusk County had, unemployment rates as high as 17.2%. And the big motivation at that point in time was to create jobs, so that if your kids and my kids wanted to stay here, they'd have that opportunity. Well, we've been fairly successful that way, you know, everybody that has a large operation here now is looking for employees, can't find enough. And, so what we need to accomplish is a little bit different, but, you know, we've been fairly successful in those regards. And that's important to keep in mind too. Marty?
Two things. The original bylaws or the original charges to this committee were economic development, I mean, was that a part of it? And how do you economically develop if you don't have buildings to put people into? So if you're gonna start putting buildings on the market, which is understandable, where do you put someone when they want to move into the community if we've sold the buildings that are here? There's no incentive, if I buy a building, there's no incentive to me to lowball some numbers to get somebody to come into the community and provide jobs and so on and so forth, but maybe that's not an issue anymore. The second one is, when was there an amendment to the bylaws that allow this committee to buy or sell real property? I can't find that, so I'm assuming it must be there somewhere.
I don't think, I think it was always supposed, Marty, that both the full county board and the full city council would have to authorize that. I don't think this committee has ever given it.
No, they weren't. That's why I'm asking is, why is it why is it this board's position to put properties up for sale that either the county bought or the city bought or that both of them have worked on together or whatever? Where does that authority come in to list these properties in this committee?
I think we can only make a recommendation.
Okay, but there's a difference between a recommendation and buying and selling.
Right.
We don't, the committee doesn't have the authority to buy or sell, and I don't know how you put it on the market and say, we're gonna list it for sale if, without going through the county board and without going through the city council to put it up for sale. I mean, this committee may say, we need to get $1 million for this piece of property, and the county board and the city council may say, gee, 750 would be a nice number. I mean, I get you out of whatever, but the majority of the county board, and I'm not casting aspersions, because I think the city council have no idea what this committee does. And they have no idea what the number of properties that are available, that are in the committee, in the county, that this committee either works over or that they have to sell or buy or whatever. And they're constantly ripped on for taking property off the county, off the tax roll. But that's a little bit different than what we're proposing here as far as buying and selling, or selling in this case, real property. I don't know how you're gonna do that, to put it on the agenda for the next meeting or something like that, especially without appraisals.
Right.
I mean, I have no idea what the Gates Avenue project of our property is worth. None. I don't know if anybody in here does, other than the number that we got from Gargalac. But how do we list it if nobody knows?
You hit on an important point there too. Somebody might look down this list and prove me wrong, but I think as I glanced down across it, I don't think there's anything that this group ever advocated taking off the tax roll. The county got tax title to some buildings that were abandoned, but we never went out ever, that I recall, and bought anything that we didn't turn around in one way, shape, or form. When we didn't have buildings to rehabilitate and put up for lease or sale, we literally built new ones for the same purpose. And some of those were sold. You know, we just talked about the Henry building and the Centerline building. those added significantly to the tax roll in the county. If this committee hadn't existed, we hadn't done a damn thing, there'd probably be bare ground out there, somebody might be making hay on it, and that would be about the only advantage we've had. So I think we've accomplished a hell of a lot, and we dwell a little bit too much, and I'm partly responsible for this, on the few things that haven't worked. Like I'll bring up 5R processors and name names. You know, there's some people in jail there. We came out on the short end of the stick there, but some people are in prison because of that. That's where they belong.
Along that same line though, there have been, even though they've screwed the county and the city both, there's still been 100 jobs that would have been gone if somebody would have shut them down earlier. My other comment is that I don't think this committee has bought buildings, or the city and the county have bought buildings. Majority have been taken off the tax roll. And that's literally the same thing to some people. They don't understand that there's a little bit of a difference there. My main concern is just that, and the Henry building was a county building, so they were able to sell it. But the city didn't get a vote on it, which is as it should be, that's our building. And I think that joint managed buildings, we gotta be a little careful.
That's my question. If you're not interested in selling those buildings, why did you get appraisals on them? What was that for then?
I think, there's a couple reasons, Al. Maybe we will decide that we need to sell some of them, or all of them at some point. And, what I'm just passing around in front of you is a proposal from one vendor to appraise the rest of these buildings. I think it also is just a good idea to know what they're worth, and to know what they're worth ahead of time in case we get an unsolicited offer. If somebody just walks in the door like they have in the past month and says, you know, somebody offered $90,000 on 501 Dowdy Road. Well, we don't have an appraisal on it. I think we know that there is a similar sized building in the county available for $500,000. We know that an engineering company told us that to replace that building would cost $3.7 million. Well, we have no basis right now on some of these to know how to reply to those inquiries. So here's a proposal to appraise those of the buildings we manage, and we don't have such numbers. I just think it's good information to have, to work from, rather than constantly be working from a point of, well, who knows? I think we need to establish.
For sale then.
What's that?
It could be for sale then.
Potentially, yeah, but I think we need to know what they're worth before we hang the for sale signs on them. And in some cases, we may decide to do that. In others, we may not.
One other comment, as far as I'm concerned, especially right now, is that if you have $100,000 building and $1 million building, and they're relatively the same size, you're not gonna get the same rent for the $1 million building that you're gonna get for the $100,000 building. So you have to have a rough idea, or at least somewhat of an idea, what your buildings are worth, so you know what kind of lease you need to get out of them in order to justify putting someone in there. And I think that's as important as trying to sell a building. Right now, we're leasing at $3 and we should be leasing at $5. Or we're leasing it a lot less than that, and we should be leasing for a lot more than that. But if the building itself isn't worth anything, you're not gonna get the lease. So I think that's another part of the reason to know what these buildings are worth.
And I think you, the county, also need to, you probably ought to have an appraisal done on the Tony Rail Yard. Because I think, those of you who sat in on the DNR presentation on wood that's grown in this area and how much is used and how much isn't, those DNR people also told you that that's a very rare site in the state of Wisconsin. That you have a piece of property that large that's attached to a rail system. It's probably very valuable. So you ought to know what somebody who's a supposed expert thinks it's worth, you know, rather than maybe just getting an offer in the door and accepting it, and then the guy that bought it from you turns around and makes $1 million on it. That benefits, it should go to the entire county. Yes, sir.
Unless I miss my guess, and Alan or Jamie correct me on this if I'm wrong. I think there was an appraisal done on that, about 12 to 18 months before Andy left.
On the rail yard?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure of that.
He come up with a figure, I remember broadcast at one county board meeting, and I thought he stated that was from appraisal. Don't quote me on it, but I thought he did.
$40,000 a year rent.
Do you recall what the number was at the time, Terry?
Thought it was a little over 8 million.
Okay.
Like I said, don't quote me on that, but that sticks in my mind for some reason.
Well, that would be great if it was, because I believe that the project was about 2.1 that built it, so. Thank you. I wasn't expecting necessarily any action on this, proposal to do these appraisals today, but if you, will take that with you and think about it, there's obviously a little bit of the vendor is offering a little bit off if we do all of them or do most of them. So we can try to make a decision on whether we wanna proceed with that at our next meeting.
He did the Gates Avenue, didn't he?
Yes, and Fritz.
He was rather slow. I hope if we decide to have him do it, that, he'll get back to us a little sooner than.
He does quote a timeline in here for when he could do these.
His last time was rather lengthy.
Yeah. And as we talked at one meeting, if it wasn't done by the end of last month, we weren't gonna pay for it. It got done, I think we got it April
The
1st.
day before.
The day after.
The day after.
One day later. The other thing, I don't know if it's, yes, sir.
On this, where's the 140 acres of land?
How many acres?
It says 140.
I think that's the Tony Rail Yard, and maybe I'm wrong on that size.
Okay.
I thought it was 160 total, but I think 11 acres of it, I think is considered for the rail switch and so forth.
Okay. And I was hoping that, that Ashley could maybe locate the construction plans that would give us some of that information or any survey that's been done.
The construction, what,
Plans. Oh,
I don't know where they were.
Do I'm still looking.
okay. If nothing else, somebody had to have designed it, so if we remember the name of the engineering company, they may still have copies. So, but they should be tracked down, because if there's any, marketing information to be developed, we really need to base it on that, and anybody that would be serious about putting up a very large facility there is probably gonna need to look at this as well, so it's important that we find them. Or maybe if you email Andy, maybe he knows right where they are. Although I know that hasn't worked always in the past.
There's a blueprint drawer somewhere around this place. I know it was in the finance office there, but I don't know where it's gone
I think
now.
Gary has it now.
Gary has it. In fact, there's a couple of them, because Andy had one and Mike Natchez had one.
Oh.
The other, subject I wanted to bring up, it's not on the agenda, so you can hold on the table if you want to, and I'll quit talking, but there's been discussion about the times and days that this committee is meeting being a little bit erratic, and I'll take partial credit for that. I'm gonna also blame part of it on the pandemic, made holding meetings a little bit more difficult, but over the last several months, you saw my glasses hanging down on the end of my nose. Before I had eye surgery, I have most of my sight back now, so I can see everybody in the room. At one point in time, I could see people, but not their faces, so I didn't know who I was talking to unless I recognized their voices. The other thing that we had done, at one point in time, it seemed that, 2 members of the county property committee were also on this committee, and so I think we tried generally to follow up on that same day that the county property committee met. hold our meetings in the afternoon. And I'd also say, I know for somebody like Randy who's driving a lot farther than most of us, that we tried to have meetings on days that those people who were coming in further could double up on meetings rather than having to come in 2 days in a row or something like that. And if the county people here wanna come to a consensus on what you think works best for you, I'm relatively flexible. Mr. Reynolds is available quite often, and the city administrator is generally available. Give us an idea of what you'd prefer, and we'll try to set that as a standing
I have no
meeting.
preference. I'm getting either way.
Well,
But-
it can't, I'm sorry, it can't be after property because the courthouse closes at 12:30 now on Fridays.
That's right, it's not Friday, courthouse goes to Fridays at 12:30, so. Oh, you know, property's usually on Friday,
Sure.
but, you know, we usually meet at 8:30, so.
Question of when you end and whether it could be fit between then and 12:30.
We might end up having to change a different day of the week, I don't know.
Or if Randy's got a day or time that works best for them, we'll accommodate
There's no
his
time for me, really, it makes a difference. I can meet anytime.
And if you wanna talk about it among yourselves and come up with a proposal, I'd be glad to listen to it. Other than that, unless, does anyone have any other business? I have nothing else here.
I think you need to approve after the fact appraisal on Fritz Avenue.
Jamie, tell us exactly what motion you think you need for that.
Approval for the appraisal on.
Okay, does everybody know what she just said there?
How much was it?
Well, the total for both the buildings ended up being 3,000, so the plan is to split it between the two buildings, between Bates and Fritz.
Would somebody make a motion to that effect?
115, 1,500 each?
Yes.
For both
I
buildings?
didn't hear what she said.
To approve the Fritz Avenue, appraisal for $1,500.
And the gates also?
And, well, the gates was approved,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Alright, now I'll make the motion.
thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. You guys discuss. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, no? Motion carried. Anything else I missed? Thank you all for coming.
One,
Gary?
Al, can you, scribble me down where all your trailers are at? When the weather gets respectable and I can crawl in there without drowning, I will.
Yeah, I can just give a quick update on that if you don't mind. I believe that they're just about wrapped up at the Enterprise Center with those trailers, and they might start moving some of the Gates Avenue ones as early as tomorrow morning. And I instructed them again there that they cannot block any of the loading docks on the west side or any of the overhead doors, because there's emergency vehicles currently stored in there that need to get out of the overhead doors, so if anybody finds anything to the contrary there, if you can let the sheriff know and Tom know, Ashley, if anything's blocking their way, it'll let me know right away, and we'll make sure they get them moved, because obviously we can't have that stuff being blocked, but then they're hoping that'll take another 2 or 3 weeks to empty out, I think, once they're moved, but yeah, I'll scribble down the physical addresses.
I think I also missed,
And how many are at each location, if you would?
Yeah.
I missed H2. Do you have anything there on A&M fiberglass?
He's still working on it. Gary did update the lock set on that back building, so he's been able to look at it. But he's still kinda waiting to hear from OSHA and, get a contractor or two to look at it. So, still working on that.
Al, do you know at the locations where these trailers are there other trailers there that are not gonna fall into this?
At Gates Avenue there are, but I went out to the ones at Gates Avenue and I spray painted a big 5R on the front side of all the trailers that are 5R. So, yeah, nobody called me in for graffiti or anything like that, so I think I'm safe, but And once those are all done too, I asked them if they could put them all together. You know, 'cause right now at Gates, they're spread all over the place. Enterprise, they're grouped together. I've even got, I've got an overhead map that I sent to the DNR. Would that be easier too than having me scribble?
Nah, just so I know how many are at each location.
Okay, fair enough.
Is there any update on the Contour building, Al? You know, remember you said the 5R, they were doing some work over there too, or?
Oh, yeah, as far as I know, that's complete or near complete, cause they wanted to do that before they dove too heavy in over here. You know, being that that one's privately owned. But I don't have a for sure, cause that was kinda, you know, between them and that property owner.
That was a nice looking building.
Any other business to come before the committee? Does anyone have anything? Again, thank you all for your time, and I think we've made a little bit more progress, and we'll keep making more. Thanks.